Well, let's turn our attention now to the telecommunications sector, where the government, through the Budget Office of the Federation, has revealed that it will begin the implementation of its proposed excise duties on telecommunication services and beverages in 2023. This is despite backlashes from the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, and the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN. Pantami had, during the maiden edition of the Nigerian Telecommunications Indigenous Content Expo, organized by the Nigeria Office of Developing the Indigenous Telecom Sector, slammed the 5% tax on telecom services. He said, quote, "The Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy is not satisfied with any effort to introduce excise duty on telecommunication services," end of quote. Well, let's assess the federal government's proposed excise duties on telecommunication services and beverages in 2023 and its impact on the economy. For further analysis, Sumbo Badijoko, a public affairs analyst, joins us via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Badijoko.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, the federal government has said that it would impose an excise duty of 5% on the telecom services, but of course it's saying that it won't do that until 2023. What are your thoughts on this?
It's been in the news for quite some time, and my feeling has always been the timing is wrong. It is when you have a high standard of living, that is when you can impose such levies, additional levies on consumers, because this will be added to the VAT, which is currently, has recently been increased from 5% to 7.5%. Now you are bringing in another 5%. It means that will make a total of 12.5%. Can you hear me?
It's distorted. I can barely hear you. But we'll probably try again. Please go ahead. Let's see if we can get better audio. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying that the 5% will be like an additional levy, an extra burden on the consumers. Why is it so? Barely 2 years ago, the VAT was increased from 5% to 7.5%. And now you're bringing in another 5%, which will make a total of 12.5%. That would mean, and which is a burden on the set of people that are paying basis lawyers, and also those in this is an extra burden. Yeah, the reason is understandable. The oil revenue is dropping, and there is need for an expansion of the non-oil revenue. That is good. But there are other alternative way of generating the non-oil revenue, which the government should really be looking at. For instance, we have luxury items that can be levied upon. You can even tax those who are high income earners. But when you give a blanket charge, a tax rate to every category of people, that is unfair to those whose income is on the lower bound, and that would further affect their standard of living. And if this is coming from a government that is promising to take 100 million people out of poverty, then it's really a bad step at this point in time.
One would wonder why the federal government is disregarding the response of the Minister of Communication and saying that, the minister that Issa Pantami had said that this was not the time to impose that kind of tax on the telecom services. But the federal government seems to be disregarding that comment and going ahead with its plan to impose the tax.
It all points to the lack of synergy that has been part of this administration. We've been complaining about it, that you have a situation where the fiscal policy is not always correlating with the monetary policy, and you have a minister doing something and another minister doing something else or not being carried along, and yet you expect all this to be a product of a council approval. And a council meeting is supposed to be a meeting that involves all serving ministers, including the
All right, Sumba Badijoko there talking to us about this imported or this move by the federal government to impose a 5% excise duty on telecom services. Of course, he's talking about the fact that the federal government can look into other areas to boost its revenue and not just telecom services. They are saying that they're going to impose this 5% excise duty on telecom services and also on sugar-sweetened beverages. And of course, this isn't the first time the federal government will be imposing this kind of tax. We'd recall in 2018, the minister then of finance, that was Kemi Adeosun, as at then, was talking about the fact that it was going to be spread between 2018 and 2020. And one would wonder why this is coming again at this time. Thank you for joining us again, Sumba Badijoko. Okay, would try to link back with Sumba Badijoko and continue the conversation. But of course, one would wonder why this is coming at this time all over the world. Sumba Badijoko, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, so I was just saying that this isn't the first time the federal government would be imposing this kind of tax on beverages and sugar, yes, sugar-sweetened beverages, and of course on alcoholic drinks, cigarette, and all of that. In 2018, the then Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, had said that the federal government was going to spread this tax between 2018 and 2020. That's a period of 3 years. And one would wonder why this is coming back now. Is it that it wasn't effective at that time, or what's the reason for bringing it back at this time?
It was actually effective, and I think it's the case of the government enjoying the benefits and wanting to now capitalize on the enjoyment that they've had. But the thing that is now is the standard of living, the inflation rate at 2018, 2019 is not what we have now. So if it is acceptable, then it's as a result of the fact that people are still relatively comfortable because of the price of goods and services are not as high as they are now. But bringing it now that things have actually skyrocketed in terms of prices of commodity is really a bad timing. I want to believe that the implementation will be delayed, so probably mid next year, and that would still be it will be a function of the fact that they would have put every measure in place to bring down the inflation level to a condition that people would now be able to bear these additional levies without it having any implication on their finances as well as their standard of living.
Okay, but we know that all over the world, nations around the world usually impose tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, on tobacco and all of that, just to reduce the consumption, especially when you look at the health consequences that the consumption of these products have on citizens. But is this an effective way of reducing the consumption of these products in Nigeria?
One thing with our government is that we just copy a policy we import a policy from abroad. It has worked there. Not
Okay, of course, we're trying to weigh the consequences of this tax, especially when you look at contemporary, or when you look at international bodies, when you look at other countries that have also imposed this tax on tobacco use, excessive alcohol consumption, and of course the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. You'd see that they have used these taxes to reduce the consumption, especially when you look at the fact that the consumption of these products contributes largely to global epidemic like that of non-communicable diseases, heart diseases, especially in the use of tobacco. And they have effectively been able to curb the consumption of these products by increasing the tax. But is that effective in a climate like Nigeria? Thank you for joining us again, Sumba Badijoko.
I was trying to say it's not really effective here because we can't be comparing a developing country as ours with developed country or advanced countries of the world. They can afford to put to jack up some rates or taxes and impose on the citizenry because a good number of the things that we spend extra money on are available for them there. For instance, power is constant over there. an average Nigerian household spend personal money to provide power for themselves. Likewise, services, which...
Okay. Of course, comparing Nigeria... Okay, some interruptions there when it comes to the audio connection. We'll try to fix that. But of course, we're still talking about the federal government's plan to impose a 5% excise duty on telco services. And of course, we've seen a report that reveals that the federal government would generate about 160.4 billion naira from this excise duty on telecom services if it is implemented in 2023. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, so I was saying that utilities services that consume extra revenue of an average Nigerian are available at the disposal of the people in advanced country. But we spend extra money on those things here. For instance, electricity. We have, between January and this month, the national grid has been down for more than 6 times. So when you have situation and people, the economy was running even when the grid was down on petroleum products. And the petroleum product, because of the fact that we have zero refining capacity, is being imported. And the inflation rate is adding to the inflation rate because of the exchange value that is on it and the cost of freight and every other items. So when you have a situation like that on ground, it will be wrong of the government to put an additional levy on the people. They can bring that up when they have been able to sort out these factors responsible for the inflation that we currently have. That is when the people can accommodate an additional charge. Paying 12.5% charges as in form of taxes on telecom consumption, it is actually wrong because that is even above the global average of taxation, which is always between 7.5% and 10%. So these are things that the government really needs to consider and have a rethink on that policy. And that's one of the reasons why one of the cabinet members talking about the minister concerned now, Minister Issa Pantami, is actually frowning at this because he knew the implication. If they go ahead with the levy, it's going to bring down the turnover of this communication company. And if they are going to be having low turnover, they may not be able to maintain the staff strength that they are currently having because they still have to pay their company income tax. And if the petroleum product is not available, like the diesel not coming down, they will have to still pay additional charges on those ones. So it's not bother.
Yes, that's for the telecom services, but I'd like us to also focus on the other sector, that's the sugar-sweetened beverages, alcoholic beverages, and that of cigarette. Would it reduce the consumption and, of course, also reduce the impact it has on the health of Nigerians? Because that has been the measure used across the world. Would review that as soon as we're able to reconnect with Sumbo Badejuku. But, of course, these are the issues that are pending, especially as the federal government plans to impose this tax in 2023. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
so for the other sector, talking about the cigarettes and the alcoholic sector, because those are what is it called? They are items that the government is trying to discourage the consumption due to the social vices it leads to. That can be accepted because the set of people that consume this product are not in the majority. They're actually in the minority. But for the sugar beverage, that is in the majority because sugar is connected to so many other, it has its own value chain. You can't bake a bread or bake anything baking is connected to sugar.
No, they are talking about sugar-sweetened drinks, like the soda and all of that, the drinks.
Oh, okay. Yes, sugar-sweetened drinks is still those that consume that are on the majority because, and this company, they are trying to de-emphasize the consumption of sugar. The excuse they gave was that to reduce the rate of diabetes and in the country. But you can actually focus more on health promotion by encouraging people to maybe do more exercises other dietary promotion than wanting to take advantage of that to make extra money for the government. That is not the best way to go. I will accept that of the tobacco and what is it called, alcoholic drinks, but that of the sugar beverage, it is really something that the government should also. The unfortunate part is that this thing has been signed into law, meaning that the implementation is just a matter of time.
But we see the president of the National Association of Telecom Subscribers, that's Adeolu Ogunbanjo, while stating that it is unfortunate that despite the minister's resentment, the federal government is going ahead to impose the tax. But he's also saying that they will mobilize Nigerians to go against it. Is this a threat, or are we going to see some industrial action in the coming days? Mr. Badejoko. Okay, of course, looking at some of the issues surrounding the impending imposition by the federal government to impose excise duty on telecom services and sugar-sweetened beverages. Thank you for joining us again, Sumba Badejoko. Okay, still quite difficult to hear what he's saying, but of course, we'll try to link back up with him. Okay, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Please stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. Sumba Badejoko is still on with us right here on the show. But we're talking about the president of the National Association of Telecom Subscribers, Adeolu Ogunbanjo, who says that they would mobilize Nigerians to repel this action by the federal government. And so I was going to take your reaction that is this some form of threat? Will there be some form of industrial action in the coming days?
Even without the mobilization, Nigerians will react because Nigerians cannot afford an additional levy from the government when there is nothing or little or nothing being done to improve the standard of living by bringing down the inflation level. So even without the mobilization of that association, Nigerians will not take it lightly because they know it will fall back on them. Their own mobilization is because they will feel the brunt of the reduced turnover that will be the major implication at their own hand. But for Nigerians, they can decide to reduce their own consumption, which is going to bring about the reduction in the turnover. Or what is called irrelevant calls will go down, costly calls will reduce. It will only be having more of business-oriented calls and calls that will yield something in return. So by the time people adjust to that, it's not going to be helpful to the government because the figure as which they are looking, even their own projection will be affected. They are looking at making about 156 billion annually from 160 billion annually from that levy, which means they will not be able to get to that mark eventually because that will be a way for people. Once something is signed into law, people cannot undo it except there is a bill that is sponsored to now repeal the earlier bill. So that's the way to go about, or they delay the implementation until a time when it will be comfortable to impose.
Yes, you know, the Minister of Communication, that's Issa Pantami, has said that the federal government should look into other areas to generate revenue and not just the telecom services. But looking at this 160 billion naira that the federal government is proposed to get from this import or this excise duty, what exactly would these funds be channeled to? Would they be channeled to other sectors like the health sector, the education sector, and or would it be pocketed by some, government individuals?
That has not been spelled out, and it will be not going to be ideal for us to be speculating because since we don't know what they have in mind, we can't really say this is what. There are so many needs. ASU has been on strike for about 3 months now. That is one need. We cannot say, we don't really know what they are planning to use. There are so many federal rules that are fixed. Security is still an issue. So these are the...
All right, we'll just leave the conversation there. A very big thank you to you, Sumba Badejoko, for your time on Business Breakfast this morning. We'll take a break now, and when we come back, budget deficits in Nigeria hits 30.58 trillion naira in the last 7 years. And this is according to data from Budget Implementation Report covering from 2015 and the first 4 months of 2022. Well, we will assess the level of implementation and impact on the economy in a moment, and that's after this break. Please stay with us.